to peek at it. I'd like to introduce fellow board members. Mark Bear is not here, will not be here for the first half hour, but he will be joining us at 7:30. I'd like to introduce Frank Kochman, Jim Langan, Stephanie Wyman, Dan Albrecht, and Quinn Mann. Also here from the city are staff, Marla Keene, who's the development review planner, and Delilah Hall, who's our zoning administrator. And we depend on them and they do an excellent job. So I just want to acknowledge that. Marla and Delilah, are there any people in the auditorium tonight?
Yes, the beta team has joined us in person.
Okay, thanks. So let me explain that there are several ways of participating in this meeting. One is to attend the meeting at City Hall. The other is to participate virtually, as many of us are doing now. And the third way is to participate by telephone. What is important, though, is that you register as a participant in these meetings by either signing the sign-in sheet in the back of the room or sending Marla an email with your contact information saying you'd like to be considered a participant. And her email is mkeene, Keene, at sburl.com. And if you are, yes, okay. I just want to remind people that there are, for people with hearing impairments, there are, for now and in the future, there are technologies that we have available to help with, so you can hear the presentations if you're in the auditorium. So the first item on the agenda tonight is the emergency evacuation procedure. And at the back of the auditorium, there are 2 doors on each side. In the case of an emergency, you would exit one of those doors and either go left or right, and that would take you outside. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items? Hearing none. Yes.
Oh, no, I just got a note from Patrick O'Brien saying that he would like to participate. I was just making sure that it wasn't, I'm not here yet, please wait.
Okay, I see him on the screen. Yeah, okay. Hi, Patrick. No changes to the agenda? Okay, couple of announcements. Thank you all for attending. Those on the phone and watching online and those in the audience. This meeting is being recorded and I've already gone over the sign-in. So I will now turn to any comments and questions from the public that are not related to the agenda. Hearing none.
Dawn, did can I make an announcement before we move forward?
Sure, I'm sorry, did I? Okay, yeah, I did skip that. Go ahead.
Announce that the LDRs, the amendments were approved by the City Council on February 7th. So those will be effective 21 days thereafter. Right now, we are working on some formatting issues. If you were to print the LDRs that were approved by City Council, you would have some blank pages and some, like, number 3 comes up twice kind of thing. So those will be up and ready to go by 21 days after, but they are available now. There's just some formatting issues.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you. And I trust that board members will get hard copies when those are available.
I will only be making hard copies if you request them.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other announcements? Okay, let's turn to number 5 on the agenda, our first project tonight, and that is continued site application SP 21039 of South Village Communities, LLC, to provide a replacement plan for trees and shrubs that were improperly removed. The plan consists of installing a heavily landscaped passive recreation area and walking path between Aiken Street and Spear Street, east of the existing paved recreation path at 1840 Spear Street. Who is here for the applicant? Who is here for the
That's me,
applicant?
Patrick O'Brien.
Anyone else, Patrick?
No,
Okay. Please raise your right hand. I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Okay. Why don't you give us a 3-sentence overview of what you've proposed, and then we can dive into the staff comment.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so thank you for describing the location. I can go over that in further detail if any of the board members wish. I was in front of you several weeks ago with this presentation, and there was some questions and concerns that had to do with the invasive species that were going to have to be removed per our Act 250 permit. And if there were enough trees on that plan to cover that area in when those invasives were taken out. And so there was a request, I think, by the majority of the board members for me to go back to the landscape architect and also meet on site with our city arborist, which I did do both, and see if there was a mechanism or an additional plantings that could be proposed that would, for lack of a better term, replace those invasives once they were removed. And that is the plan that was put forth in this application.
Thank you. So the staff comment, there's only one staff comment, and it is the question, is the planting plan acceptable to the board? And I would welcome any board feedback or input.
Mr. Chairperson?
Yes.
May I give a brief presentation and as it relates to the changes that we proposed?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're all looking at L100, the sheet. And to put this into perspective, the area that these trees are planted within is about 260 feet long, and at the widest point about 110 feet. So that encompasses about a half an acre. The previous plan didn't have any plantings within the dark squiggly line. That dark squiggly line basically represents an area that is the majority of which is invasive species that will need to be removed. So what we did was we went back and originally the last plan proposed 37 new trees. This plan proposes 55 new trees. And as you can see, they are, for the majority of them, they are clumped together. We've got 28 evergreens and 3 different species. We have pines, balsam, and hemlock. We've got 16 deciduous trees and 4 different species. We've got maples, birch, a catalpa, which I don't even know honestly what it is, and some flowering lilac, some lilac trees. And lastly, for the wildlife, we have some fruit-bearing trees, service berries, and pears. So we have a greater mix of trees. We have more of them. But more importantly, per your request, what we did was we planted additional trees within and just outside that dark squiggly line. And a couple of, something I wanted to point out that is important to note, and that is not all of that area needs to be removed. There are some trees in there that are native. So what we did, you'll see just to the left of the plan below the landscape legend, we have a note that says approximate location of plant. The purpose of that is if we go out there, we wanted to have some flexibility to say, well, we know that it shows that we're supposed to plant 2 hemlocks right here, but there's some nice native trees there. So we're going to leave those and we're going to move over 10 feet there. So that's the intent of that note. Is just to give us a little tiny bit of flexibility so we don't have to be boxed into a situation where we have to cut down a native tree. That's obviously not the intent. So really, that's it. If you weren't here for the last meeting, but you were here for the first, this is the third meeting. The first meeting we did show a trail network, some benches throughout this area, but in meeting with the South Village Homeowners Association, as well as the Stewardship Board, they felt that, given that there's already 7 miles of sidewalks, bike paths, and quiet trails at South Village, that there was already plenty out there, and they had requested that those be taken off the plan. So that's why those were removed.
Thank you, Patrick.
You're welcome.
Questions or comments from the board about the planting plan and its acceptability at this point as presented?
It looks good to me. I think we're at a bigger stretch of forest. A little side path would be of interest, but since it's a pretty small spot, I'm fine with that change.
Yeah. I would have to say that I was struck by the comment that one homeowner said that that the previous trees didn't fully screen. So that leads me to believe that this will be an adequate replacement. So that's my opinion. I don't know about other folks.
I think that was a comment from the arborist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I stand corrected.
Yeah, a neighbor had commented to me at the time that they did provide a screen.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Probably depends on what floor, but okay. Other comments from the board? Are we ready to close this SP 21039? Yes, Patrick, go ahead.
When you guys are discussing this in closed session, I would like to simply make a request, and that is if you were to go back to the application, I had asked for a condition of approval that gave me, not basically me, gave the city arborist the ability to make a substitute for some trees. And the reason I asked that is this year is even worse than last year in regards to sourcing specific species of trees because of the supply chain. So you'll see on my original letter, there is a request that basically said, if I can't get a certain tree, may I please go to the city arborist for a substitution? So if you guys could speak to that. And then the second thing is, I know you're all busy, but it would be really great if you could deliberate on this and render a decision sooner than later. And honestly, it has to do with the supply chain because I already have some other landscape plans that are out to bid, and I keep getting warnings that I should place my orders now because there's obviously a shortage of nursery stock and trees. So I just don't want to be in a situation where 30 or 45 days from now I get approved and then I go to place an order and all of a sudden I have to make a whole bunch of substitutes because of these trees are not available. So in the event that you are inclined to approve this, I just ask that you do it sooner than later.
Thank you. Does
Yeah,
any?
go on.
Yes, Frank, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Patrick, there was just something I didn't understand in your presentation. There was a plan. Is it possible to put the plan back up that we were looking at? Is it possible to put that back up on the screen? And I'll ask the question in the meantime. I thought you said, yeah, there it is. I believe you said you didn't want to have to be necessarily held to this precise plan because you might get there and find native trees that there would be no reason to remove. I gather you are not showing the native trees on this plan?
So what we have done, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention it, but I didn't want to dive down into the details unless I was asked. Last meeting, I think a similar question was asked. And that was one of the reasons why there was a request for to have the city arborist come out and take a look. In fact, what I did after that meeting is I called and had a meeting with Mr. Bob Hymans, who's the specialist that the South Village Stewardship Board now hires to take care of and manage all the invasive species at South Village. My charge to him was very specific. And I said to him, I would like you to actually go out and flag either the natives or the invasives. So the city arborist, when he came out, he could specifically see which ones were which. Well, he called me back about 45 minutes later after I left, and he said, this is impossible because there's hundreds of trees out there, most of which are 1 or 2 inches in diameter. I would have to, this is going to take me forever. So the point is that what you would need to envision in looking at this is that area, even though it's small, has 100, 200, 250 small trees, a percentage of which are invasive and a percentage of which are native. And I just don't want to, I'm just looking for a little bit of flexibility. What you don't see out there is 100 or 50 trees that are more than 4 inches in diameter. It's just like early successional native with maybe a dozen or so trees that are greater than 8 inches that we're going to leave alone unless they're invasives. I hope that answers your question.
Well, not entirely. Are you saying you want flexibility to plant fewer trees? Or
No.
flexibility to locate them in a slightly different place?
The latter. I'd like flexibility to plant the trees one way or another 5 feet.
Right, but substantially the same trees and the same quality and the same diameter and et cetera, right?
That's correct, Frank. Yes.
All right, thank you. That's my question. All right.
But it also sounds, Frank, like you're asking Patrick for a little flexibility given the available inventory to swap one species for another. For example, if the catalpa that you want to plant is not available, you're going to need to replace it with something else.
Yeah, and typically the way that would happen is I would send the city arborist via the planning staff a couple of substitutes. And the city arborist would approve of one of those substitutes.
Yeah, I think the request is reasonable, and I don't think we have any option but to, or shouldn't seek any option other than the trusted discretion of the city arborist.
I would agree with that. Other board members? Any comments? Is there anyone who does not find this plan acceptable?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Dawn,
Wait, I'm sorry.
Let's just wait
It's
for
not-
public comment period. If the board's done discussion, are we ready for public comments?
Well, I was just going to say, you're a member of the public, obviously. Give me 1 minute, please. Is Noah your name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, one minute, please. Is there anyone on the board who's not okay with this? Okay, now we're going to turn to public comment. Go ahead, Noah.
Hi, my name is Noah Hyman, 1575 Dorset Street. Something was said that I just don't understand. So I have about 31.5 acres, and I've had arborists come through and we've tagged everything on my property. It's not hard. It's not expensive. It's free. They're right down there on off of Spear Street. You can go in there, they will come. This is what they do. This is what they love. They will take out and tag, well, they won't take out, I'm sorry. They will tag invasive species, which the city arborist can then remove. I've done it here. I've taken out, oh my gosh, how much buckthorn and poplar and just honeysuckle. It's not hard. It's better for the environment. And I think if we were to treat this property for the better of the environment, then we could call in the appropriate people. It's not a problem. I've done it. I know other people that have done it, and it's easy peasy. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments from the public?
Yes.
Stuart has his hand up.
Okay, Mr.
Yeah.
Moat.
Hi, thank you. I'm Stuart Mowat. I'm a member of the HOA board on South Village. And I can also speak for the stewardship board. Both of us are happy with this proposal from Patrick. So it's a big improvement on what we saw before, and we like it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moat. Any other members of the public who would like to comment? Delilah, are there any online who have expressed interest? Any others online?
I do not see any others.
Okay, thank you so much. Patrick, did I see you raise your hand? Do you have a final comment before we address closure?
No, I just, I want to thank Noah. I don't know your last name, but I'm assuming he will be on the sign-in sheet. I'll reach out to him and obtain his email address and try to get the contact numbers for the resources that he has used.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other questions before we entertain a motion to close this hearing? Okay, would anyone like to move closure?
Make a motion to close the hearing for the application in hand.
Thanks, Dan. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, the motion is carried. This SP 21039 is closed. Thank you,
all very
Patrick.
much for your time.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to the next one. Let me just call it up here. Okay. All right, number 6 on the agenda, continued master plan application MP 2102 of Beta Air LLC for a planned unit development on 5 lots, developed with a quarry, a mixed commercial building, a warehouse, a contractor yard, and an RV sales, service, and repair facility. The master plan includes combining the 5 lots, resulting in 1 lot of 747.92 acres, and consists of a 344,000 square foot manufacturing and office building, a 37,800 square foot office and retail building, a 15,600 square foot commercial building, and an 85,000 square foot flight instruction and airport use building of
97% signal reliability anywhere in the
6
country.
acres of the resulting airport lot at 3070 Williston Road. Somebody needs to mute. Okay, thanks, much better. Thanks. All right. Who is here for the applicant, please?
Hi, this is Art Klugo with Beta Technologies.
Hi, Art.
And Blaine Newton from Beta Technologies.
Blaine, B-L-A-N-E?
B-L-A-I-N.
Okay. Okay.
If you care, if you know, are a bubble, that's fine. But if you would like to not sit so close to each other, all the other mics are also live.
Great. Thank you. And if I take my mask off, is that okay for the conversation? Or should I leave it on?
I think
It's your green.
If you're comfortable with that, it's easier for us to hear you.
Is your green light on?
It is, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So remind me, Marla, if they've been sworn in before, this is still part of that hearing?
So Art has been sworn in, Blaine has not.
Okay, let's go ahead and swear you both in. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. So we have a staff report, which is written as a draft decision, but there's a couple of items for us to talk about tonight. And I wonder if applicant, you would like to give us any introductory comments based on the staff report. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just ask if there are any disclosures or recusals.
Yeah, Don, I am recused from this application.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Any others? Okay. All right, applicant, go ahead.
Hi, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm going to hand this over fairly quickly to Art for kind of a technical discussion. I just wanted to give some thoughts. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Beta, have been there for 2.5 years or so. And first off, want to thank you for having us, and happy to be part of this public process to figure out how we can find a path forward that's in the community's best interest and Beta's best interest. You know, when I joined Beta 2.5 years ago, we were 30 people in a beat up old hangar that probably should have been torn down at the North Hangar. And the level of support we got at all levels of government, from this board through the state offices, to get that project moved along very, very quickly, so that we could build what we're pretty proud of as a world-class aerospace R&D center, was something I'd never seen before. The level of pragmatism applied to getting that done was just awesome, and that's important to us. You know, we're a small startup aerospace company here in Vermont, and our only advantage is time. It's a matter of time before the Boeings and the Airbuses and others with billions of dollars of capital and huge talent pools come into this market. And our ability to execute quickly is core to our ability to be successful and keep our promises to our customers, so they can keep their promises of sustainable execution of their missions, and we can keep our promise to this community to build a business that can create significant job growth. And as we started that expansion, you know, we were courted by half a dozen at least geographies that had deeper built-in and larger aerospace talent pools and deeper economic incentive pockets, but it didn't matter. As Kyle and Katie and I and Art and others looked around, Vermont was the obvious choice, and the south end of the airport in particular, for a variety of reasons. It's the pragmatism that's exhibited in the state, the connection to mission that, you know, of people that live here that want to get out and experience the outdoors and enjoy the state are naturally connected to our mission of bending the curve on climate change. And going back to that collaboration, the ability to find a mutual solution and run at it hard at all levels of government and at all levels in the community is unmatched in any place that I've lived or worked. And it's really why we're here. And, you know, Art has laid out over the last several meetings, and I've listened in, I haven't been here, our master plan to build a cultural and training center to train pilots and technicians and invite the community in, and what we believe is a pretty beautiful, large scale for Vermont final assembly facility that is aligned with our sustainability goals, and we're investing significant dollars to make it net zero and to blend in with the beautiful landscape here. And you know, that facility is key to our ability to keep pace on our time, on that race that we have to get to market quickly, so that we can build aircraft and test them with the FAA and deliver them to our customers and create the hundreds of great jobs that we know we can, and also bend the curve on climate change. I'm going to turn it over to Art here, but I hope that we can find a resolution that allows us to move out tonight on building this facility and this campus here in South Burlington. It's where we think we have the best chance of success, and we hope we can find a resolution that is in the best interest of the South Burlington community and of Beta. Thanks. I'll turn it over to Art.
Thank you, Blaine. We are all very excited about Beta's presence here and are interested in your growth. So,
Dawn?
Frank has his hand up.
sure, Frank, go ahead.
Just before we get into it with Art, I wonder, I was sort of fascinated from a little bit I know from, I have a neighbor who works with Beta. Would you explain exactly what you're manufacturing and who your customers are?
Yeah, for sure. So
you don't have to identify them, but the
no,
industry.
Happy to. We've been really proud of the customers that we've been able to court, and you know we're a propulsion company at heart, and so we're building what I'd call insanely reliable electric motors, batteries, and the power electronics that power them, along with the charging stations here in Vermont. That's really the core enabling technology and where the value lives and the job creation is in electric aviation. The rest of the things that go on an airplane, the carbon fiber structures or the avionics or the brakes, that supply chain exists. And so in Williston, we'll be currently building the motors, the electric motors and the batteries and the inverters, and in this facility we're talking about here, we'll be taking items from the supply chain, taking our motors and kind of stuffing them all together to do final assembly on the aircraft. And so there'll be electric aircraft flying zero emissions out of the tailpipe, rolling out of this facility in 2023 if all things go as planned here over the next little bit. And our customers are initially will be sending aircraft down to San Antonio in 2023 and 2024 for the U.S. Air Force testing. They have a training facility in San Antonio right now where they're training 85 airmen and women to fly our aircraft. And we have an on-site simulator there that they're training in literally as we speak. So our initial deliveries will be for Air Force logistics missions and Army logistic missions, followed as soon as we're certified in late 2024 with deliveries to United Therapeutics, who's in the organ distribution business and organ generation business, and then UPS directly thereafter. And so UPS is looking to optimize their network in an environmentally sustainable way. They're flying around on 40-year-old turboprops today. And they see, because of the environmental benefits and the cost benefits provided by electric aviation, as a way to increase customer quality and reduce their environmental footprint. 60% of UPS's carbon emissions come from their airline, and we're the first option that they have to start to bend that downward in a reliable way. And so those are our initial customers, and we're in conversations with a number of others that we're pretty excited about. And then later downstream, we have a customer name called Blade, which is regional air mobility for the passenger markets. But yeah, happy to go in any amount of detail as you'd like there. We're pretty passionate about it and excited about the partners that we have to make this a reality.
Just a quick follow-up, sorry, Dawn, but are you doing something with pilot-less aircraft? Is that part of
Yeah,
what?
we are building a manned aircraft, and so the part of this master plan is to train, to provide a factory school for training for the 7,000 pilots and 7,000 technicians we're going to expect to need in our fleet across the U.S. By 2030. It's entirely possible that the Air Force and Army will look to build this as a remote piloted aircraft, but in commercial sectors, we see this as being certified as a manned aircraft.
So you're building the aircraft, not just the engine, right?
Yeah, we're producing the aircraft and assembling it here at this proposed development at the south end of the airport.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Dawn, I think you're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you. Are you publicly traded at the current time?
We are not. We're a privately funded business, as well as we took a pretty pragmatic approach about this. Many of our competitors have gone public and raised billions of dollars. We've kind of kept our heads down and raised money privately, but also have earned our keep with development projects with the Air Force and United Therapeutics.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we move on to the staff comments? Okay, so the first staff comment involves the traffic impact study. And we are expecting some results tonight, and I will turn it over to Marla to speak to those.
Yeah, so I got the results of the technical review of the traffic study yesterday. There were 3 questions in it. One was some numbers that appeared erroneous. I actually caught up with the applicant's traffic engineer today. There was some weird glitch where the numbers at the beginning of the table got pasted wrong, but they got added up correctly by the end, so that's not a problem. There was a question about the trip generation in the first phase, which is the office and manufacturing building. And there was a question about trip generation in the red phase, which is the commercial building at the front of the site. If the questions of the technical reviewer pan out, the applicant may have overestimated the number of trips by somewhere between 50 and 70 trips. And so my question to our technical reviewer was, would that change the final answers? And he said, well, it might. So a couple things. One is, this is a master plan. One of the master plan review criteria is whether they meet the total number of trips, or to establish the total number of trips allowable, beyond which they would have to amend their master plan. So the board can decide whether to require them to make these adjustments that were from the technical review or not. And if not, then they can keep the number of trips of 553 that's recommended in this memo. That does give them a buffer from their actual proposed 526, or a buffer of 50 to 70 more if the recommendations of the technical review pan out to be correct. And then the second piece is that, this is very complicated. If the recommendation of the technical reviewer about the red phase, that commercial building, pans out, that may affect signal warrants at that time. What the board has done in the past for traffic studies is they've just said, update it. Once you've built your first phase and you come in for your next phase, do a little update, see where things are. I think that would be, in this case, appropriate to, kind of true up the numbers, see what's happening on Williston Rd, see what's being generated by the development, and also to evaluate that comment of the technical reviewer for that red phase. So that would be my recommendation for that. And then the third recommendation about the trip generation of the manufacturing and office, which is in for preliminary and final plat now. Sorry, I'm just kind of gathering my thoughts because I want to make sure it's not confusing. So if we jump ahead to thinking about the final plat that's being reviewed tonight, that plan set includes the traffic signal. Reviewing the materials that were submitted embedded in a package that the applicant sent us, VTrans provided their letter of intent, and they said, we are not intending to approve the traffic signal for the office and manufacturing building, though we acknowledge that it may be warranted later. So given that VTrans has the ultimate say of work on Williston Rd, it doesn't really matter whether the board says traffic signal is warranted for office and manufacturing, or the board says traffic signal is not warranted for the office and manufacturing. Since the technical review thinks that the trips are overestimated, the VTrans has said we're not going to approve a traffic signal for the first phase. And actually, in speaking with the applicant's traffic consultant today, they have also amended their study to say traffic signal not warranted in the first phase. I would recommend that we just say, no traffic signal in the first phase. Please come back and tell us whether it's needed when you come in for the next phase.
Thank you, Marla. Applicant, what are your thoughts about that?
That sounds like a very reasonable plan, and we're certainly happy to take that as a condition of the decision.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any board questions or comments before we move on? Okay, hearing none. Let's see, where's the second comment? This comment relates to parking and the recreational amenity in the red phase. Marla, I'm going to need you to do a Cliff's Notes on this. I wasn't quite sure I had a handle on this. Could you just give us the elevator speech on this, please?
Yeah, any plan, I think. Any sort of overall plan would be great. So this is where, you know, the board had a lot of discussion about how parking must be located at the rear or sides of building.
Right.
The applicant said, well, it's the airport. And the board had said, well, you know, you have shown us a design that has parking located to the rear or side. So your master plan looks good, but how are we going to deal with it in the time during which that first building up against Williston Road is not yet constructed? So they've come in and they've said, well, how about we build this recreational amenity? We met with them on this and we talked about it, and this was something that we all kind of agreed was a good idea. And so staff's position is down to the details. But ultimately the decision is of the board to decide whether this recreational amenity meets the standard that parking shall be to the side or rear, with these exceptions. And one of the exceptions that's listed here is the board may approve parking between a public street and one or more buildings if the principal use of the lot is for public recreation. So that's where staff thinks that this is viable, but it's up to you guys.
So are we talking about, can you show us, we're talking about the long, thin pink building on this visual. And so the building wouldn't be constructed, correct?
Not yet.
Okay.
So the building would be replaced by, oh goodness.
A long pink thing.
Page 16 of the packet shows what it'd be replaced by. So just one more page. And this would be in place until such time as the long pink building was constructed.
And this is right along Williston Road.
Yes.
And so could you point with your marker where the parking would be for this, please?
Or you can just go back to the other page and I can point. So all of the parking that you saw on that other sheet is sort of back in this area and beyond.
Okay.
I have a question. What makes this recreational? And the previous question is, has the board ever approved such the recreation amenity clause with another project?
I would defer to the applicant. I mean, I can certainly speak to why staff thought this looked okay, but I think the applicant has prepared a presentation on that. As to whether the board has approved something using the recreational amenity clause. They looked at it for sketch in South Village. Don't know. Suppose we did it on what's it called, Veterans Memorial, when we recently approved that addition for the hockey arena. But I don't know that that there's precedent for it on a private site.
So it's kind of a pocket park. Or is it bigger than a pocket park?
Art looks like he's
Pocket park.
itching to present, so why don't we turn it over to him?
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, happy to help out here. It is bigger than a pocket park. It's probably a little less than 100 by 200. So what's that? Half an acre. So it's a little bit bigger than a pocket park. But the intent here is to provide a feature that makes those sidewalks in a lot of ways more usable, because the sidewalks don't go anywhere east and west. We've created these landforms, these paths for folks to come out and just really hang out, as well as a place for some public art. Create some interest and a different type of park than what we have elsewhere on the master plan. This would be very similar in a lot of ways to the well-received, I believe they're the geese or the goose or the just across the street here around the wetlands, where people like a couple of benches, you can walk around out there, take a short walk, sit on a bench, or in this particular case, these landforms vary in height from say 0 up to 5 or 6 feet, Jeff? 6 to 8. Yeah, 6 to 8 feet. So they're fairly substantial. You can go sit out there, read a book, or just generally hang out. And so this felt like a nice way to bring some additional recreation amenities into the project, closer to where people would be accessing the property and not have to go so deep.
But it's temporary, correct?
It would be temporary, and it would then be replaced by the commercial building, which is what the master plan would call for at some point in time in the future. It's intended to be a bridge, and a bridge in a way that has more use than maybe some of the other examples around town.
Okay, thank you. Frank, did you have a question? Or was it Dan?
It wasn't.
Well, I just want more. I'm torn a little bit, because to me, the location of the building, the first building, is because you wanted to be able to roll right out on the tarmac. And then we have this regulation that says you can't put your parking in front of the building. Because part of me would say, if this was a normal lot layout, is that large building would go right on Williston Road itself to create street presence and a true city environment. But it is what it is, because that's where you obviously don't want to have to truck your airplanes a couple hundred feet just to get to the tarmac space. So we're trying to accommodate a quasi airport operation, because you obviously need to test these things and get them out on the runway. So we're trying to fit
It should also be, we should consider, Dan, that this is an industrially zoned area. We have the airport industrial and we have the mixed industrial. So this is intended to be a dense industrial area where we can create mixed, moderate to high intensity uses. And what we've tried to do here is provide that bridge in a very thoughtful, creative way in working with staff. We looked at a couple of different options, and this seemed to be the one that passed the test to the standards that are in the LDRs. It's certainly not traditional based on what we've seen in South Burlington before, but it's a good, creative, collaborative way to reconcile the challenge and the hardship that is created by having an airport and trying to do a manufacturing facility on the airport.
Right, that's the challenge. Marla, question, are there sidewalks to the west and east of this lot?
On Williston Road?
Yeah.
Not at this time.
Yeah, and my worry about this, and this is somewhat, and I get what you're trying to do, Art here, and you're doing the best you can with what we're stuck with. And this reminds me of these little slivers of sidewalk that we occasionally see, and all that. So I get it. I just sort of like, well, first of all, if we're going to sign off on this, there needs to be signage that it's available for public use and public use encouraged.
Right.
Because if it's a recreational amenity, and it's hard because it doesn't even connect with the sidewalk there, so.
So Dan, as you're thinking about this, I probably should have pointed this out earlier, but to the left-hand side of the sheet is actually where the bus stop will be. So for those of our employees and those folks that might be taking the bus, it's a little bit off the left side of the paper. The bus stop is there. They'll have an opportunity to walk through this either on the way up to the facility, or when they're waiting for their bus, they've got something a little bit grander than the glass traditional shelter.
Right, and it's good for your employees, and that's great. My sense is that this recreational amenity concept was probably thinking that we would have parks where the public, where things would be screening, and where the recreational amenity was for the broader public benefit. If essentially we're giving you a waiver that there's not a building in screening the park. That's all I'm pointing out. I don't think I'm going to die on this. I think
LDR, you think that LDR was probably intended for true parks rather than small private spaces?
Well, definitely the private space thing. Yeah. Like the LDRs are probably silent on this. It's the same thing with easements. If we're granting easements and tax write-offs and open space easements, but the public doesn't have a right to use this property, or there's no signage or no parking, then what's the purpose other than finding a way to get around the LDR? I don't deny this is going to be pretty, and over time, maybe some employees of the businesses in an area might go, "Oh, hey, I can hang out on here. Don't worry, it's cool. I read the board's decision." But without some signage and marking, it's not really a public amenity and stuff. It's the same thing with a little path. Yeah, when the campus is all built out and people are coming out there to hang out in the cool space or see your museum display all about how Beta started, in the early 2000s, we're a ways away from that. And so I just worry that this will be kind of sit there because there's no dang connectivity on the sidewalks. That's all.
So
nobody's walking on these sidewalks anyway, and there's no bike path.
It's interesting because a lot of times when we think about recreation, we think recreation is a very active thing. You get out there, you kick a ball, you throw a ball or a frisbee. Recreation actually has a variety of ways of being experienced, and for some people, it's just sitting there hanging out. And we are connected to the broader paths. You can see the path just to the right of that page. It's going to go up to the viewing area. It's going to connect to the paths that go over to the airport rec path system that then connects to the broader South Burlington system. And certainly last but not least is we do have businesses, as you pointed out, Mirabelle's, that has a really terrible experience right now, right up against a bunch of cars and some construction. I'm not sure who's doing the construction, but to be able to provide them an opportunity where they can grab, or if I want to grab a cup of coffee and a scone and just go hang out, then there's some other place to do it besides what's currently there. It's not traditional, Dan, by any stretch. I certainly understand the challenge that the board has on this. But again, in looking through the way the LDR provision is written and with the work that we did in staff to get here, we feel like we've come to a pretty good place for a short period of time or some period of time that this will exist. And we're happy to provide any way, wayfinding or signage, those sorts of things, certainly.
You said the magic word, because we still don't have this at some of our parks and open space. Wayfinding and signage, so that the same thing with that path. That's a great little concept. So we need some signage in there so people know, like, oh yeah, I can go on this, without having to look up an LDR, a DRB decision.
I have a question based on what Dan just said and based on what I've heard the airport say in other cases. Are there restrictions on what kind of language you can use to describe this space? Because I understand there's something about airport funding and you can't use it as a park, and what could it say? I'm kind of half looking at Larry.
Yeah, and I was going to say we probably need to, we understand that the goal here is to have wayfinding with that. I'm sure we could work with the airport to figure that out. The land is not, and Larry, if I go astray, pull me back here. The land is not changing ownership we actually will have an easement to use that property and develop it in this way. And so we're doing that consistent with what the lease will be with the airport. We're not stepping out and creating an encumbrance for the airport against any FAA guidelines that they have.
There's something can you hear me,
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes, I can.
This is, a moment in history because I don't think I've ever wholeheartedly agreed with Art in any other public meeting before, but I agree with Art in this sense. If this is anything like that area, and I'd appreciate if you make the representation. He suggested it was. I'd like to hear how it's going to be that way. If it's anything like the public space with the geese in across from City Hall, it's terrific. It would be terrific. That's a delightful space. It's unique in the city, I think, and passive recreation. I'm going to reinforce this point. Passive recreation of that quality is still recreation. That would be my input on that, and I'd like to hear what kind of amenities he's going to put in there to reinforce that.
Thank you, Frank. It's a crazy world, isn't it?
Here we are.
We've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, one of the benchmarks for this idea was the park right out here across from City Hall. The other benchmark was a park that Paul and staff had referenced down in Middlebury. I can't remember the exact name of the park, but this sort of passive experience. And so the plantings are going to be very similar, if not the same, to what we have elsewhere on the property to create some cohesiveness. And then you'll see that there's benches there. We're actually going to salvage some fantastic boulders that have been found in the site work that's happened to date. We'll pull those forward. So there's places for people to actually, kids if they want, to climb or sit and lounge against. We've got a space in there. You can see it in the upper left-hand corner, just adjacent to just below the parking, where there'll be public art. The landforms are intended to be very sculptural and peaceful in nature, and it's always a challenge, right, when we're right up against Williston Road, and that's why the height plays such an important role in creating this passive park element, and that you don't feel like you're sitting right up against a car. Unfortunately, Williston Road is a little faster than Market Street, and so we have to find some creative ways to make it more desirable for people to come and hang out, and we think we've done that. This is an early sketch, Frank. We'll be working on some renderings for this as well, and we're happy to share those with staff and the DRB as we move through the final process of this park, this amenity.
So this would be proposed, just to walk back on what you just said, this would be going in with the first final plat.
That's right, yes.
Right, so if we close, we're closed. There's no more information that you can submit.
Yeah.
Well, I would, understood, I would just kind of if there's interest in watching the development and what the final renderings look like, we're happy to share those outside of the proceedings.
Got it.
Yes.
Marla, I have one more question, because obviously, other than beauty and passive recreation, Art has, a commercial agenda here. Is he right that this avoids legitimately and not wink, wink, the parking restriction?
Well,
Is it bona fide? Is it bona fide as an avoidance? That's what I'm saying.
in the staff comment, I quote exactly the provision. 14.06 B2 b5 permits the board to approve the minimum amount of parking between a public street and one or more building if the principal use of the lot is for public recreation. In my opinion, it certainly is for public recreation. The word lot is used, but I don't know that that necessarily matters in this situation, because this is a master plan, not an individual lot by lot project. And then the minimum amount of parking between a public street and one or more building, I think that's met because they've demonstrated that the parking can't go between the building, or it can't go behind the building.
Okay.
So I have a question. What kind of time frame do you see that, how long will this last and be there? Because I can envision, if it's as nice as you say it is, a backlash when you go to take it out and replace it with a building.
Well, can I answer that? So the board has
Sure.
decided with the applicant's agreement that the master plan is going to be valid for 10 years. So they either get all the phases approved in 10 years, or whatever they've constructed within that time lives on forever, or they amend their master, or until they amend their master plan. So if, they build their first phase and this goes in, and then they move to Switzerland, then this is what we have. And if they
Okay.
actually go forward with their plan, they build a commercial building in that space.
Which might stir up some controversy with people who enjoy it, but I guess that's the way it is.
Well, we could leave it, or the alternative is leave it ugly and then they won't mind, right?
All right, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have, I'm sorry to do this, but
No, go ahead, Frank.
principal use of the lot. I don't know if we can just, how comfortable everybody is just brushing past the word lot. We're talking about a lot of 37 acres. That's the lot. The principal use is certainly not recreation.
I'm reading it again. Space. Principal use of the lot. I see what your concern is. Jim, any lawyer thoughts? Principal use of the lot. I'm not sure Jim's still on.
So Frank, perhaps one way to manage that, if that word is important, and I certainly understand what you're saying, is that as part, if we substitute, and you're the attorney, so I'm going to defer to you on this, but in concept, if the word lot was substituted for parcel, as we are defining the lease parcels, not the legal subdivision into parcels, the lease parcels, this is dedicated in the lease that we are constructing with the landowner for this particular use, and is not part of the other lease parcels that make up the master plan, the PUD.
That's interesting. What if you just left it out of the, I mean, right now, is it distinct as it sits there? If as a real estate matter, is it distinct or is it just,
No.
what's it? No.
The property lines are across it.
Right.
Well, you have a subdivision plan in front of us. What if you altered the subdivision plan to carve this out for the time being? And came back in whenever you're ready to do it. Or not, I mean, is that, Marla, is that off the wall here?
I think I have a little bit of heartburn with that, because then your parking isn't on the same lot as the public recreation.
If the board found its way there, we do have more parking than we need. We're building more parking than we need because we have to put the infrastructure in place the way the infrastructure is designed. So we just decided we'd build the parking, and it's certainly nothing that would prohibit us, given where we're at, to say those spaces that are right up against the amenity are not exclusive.
I'm not sure that solves it. And, this is building the plane as you fly it, right? But
A little bit.
which is one of our favorite beta
Right.
things to say in our office. But if then you have all this parking that isn't on the lot, that's still in front of a building, you know what I mean? Like if you were to carve out the 10 spaces that are immediately adjacent to be on the public recreation lot, then you've created a problem for the rest of the parking, I think.
But then isn't if you create that lot, then does that lot behind a lot have the same obligations in terms of a building in front of the parking that this first one would, right? As you go deep, like how does that actually apply when there is something in front of it?
It would still apply because the requirement is not for parking to be to the rear of. Yeah, I think it's the parking requirements are on a lot by lot basis, not on a area basis.
So we're
Marla,
Yes,
I got a quick question here.
yes.
The overall purpose of this is screening. That's the whole purpose of the standard, right? We didn't want oceans of parking being the stuff we see as we drive along the road.
Not just screening, but also street activation.
Okay, right. Street activation too. Isn't this analogous to the stuff on Kimball Ave? Because it's not really a campus, but then we'll do this nicely crafted landscaping along the bike path.
That's a different exemption. That's the exemption of having a central campus quad and the parking on the perimeter outside the buildings.
Dawn, am I unmuted now? This is Jim.
Yes, hi Jim. Weigh in, please.
Okay. Great. Well, I missed Frank's initial concern, so I didn't follow. It seemed like we took a turn here, but I didn't follow what the.
Principally,
we're on the path about liking the amenity, and then I couldn't hear Frank.
yeah, my reluctant concern, and it is reluctant because I do like the amenity, is Marla points me to what Art is relying on, and it requires that the principal use of the quote principal use of the lot be for public recreation. And I'm trying to figure out how we get to argue that that the lot is anything other than the 37 acres they are determined to make into one lot. And I mean, in normal, but if you can lawyer us out of it, I'd appreciate it.
Not on the right. No, as Marla said, not on the fly right now. Okay. Well, at least now I follow.
You see what we're looking at?
Yep. I can see this. Yeah, I can see the screen.
And Art, just to summarize, if you missed that too, Art is saying, well, if we create a lease parcel from the owner to the lessee, isn't that a lot? And I sort of, part of me says, well, that's sort of mumble. That depends on how much I like the amenity, but that's not a basis on which we should be making decisions,
Yeah.
Okay.
So as we try to work towards ideally closing this tonight with all the work that staff's put in it and the DRB and the whole host of folks on our team that have tried to bring this to closure, how do we get this across the finish line?
That's a great question. Marla, I would turn to you for your thoughts. Did someone else have a question?
Yeah, the question was, what are the grounds, if they exist, for us to waive the front of the building requirement?
I don't think we can.
No, that's specifically prohibited. Remember, we went through this, you had a deliberation with legal counsel.
Does legal counsel have a view on principal use of the lot?
We didn't ask them.
Why don't you ask them?
Okay.
That sounds very, I appreciate that perspective, Frank. That sounds very much like a continuation, which is going to set this whole thing sideways.
Yeah, that would be my concern too, but.
I mean, the options are, you know, we all kind of understand the input data. I guess the only thing I would say is, you know, Beta, make your best offer, and then the board can deliberate and see if they can approve the offer that's on the table. And if your best offer is slightly more approvable, maybe they go that way. And then there's always the reconsideration option if they can't get there.
I think you have the best offer on the table. We worked, our staff did a great job working with us. We felt like it was collaborative. We were all negotiating and bringing this together in good faith. Yep. Frankly, the only other place that we have to go at this point is a place that we haven't wanted to go, and certainly, you know, respect that the DRB deliberated with council, but we have a separate council opinion that says you do have the latitude to waive this. We've purposefully stayed away from that so that we could collectively, collaboratively find a way to do this, because we don't fundamentally believe anybody on your side of the table doesn't want to see this project move forward. And if it takes council to get this done, somehow we need to be able to bring this to closure. We've got a project that we need to stick a shovel in the ground to meet those commitments that Blaine outlined just a little while ago.
I have a question. If you had the money, I don't know what your financial situation is, but if you had the money to build that little pink building that I think will be a daycare eventually.
Actually, it's a separate building. The daycare, which would be across the street in the master plan.
Okay.
It's a small building, is in the planning phase right now.
Okay.
That pink building, the commercial building, is separate.
Why can't you just build the pink building, the commercial building, as part of this? Would that solve the problem?
What's being asked in there is for us to spend so for that building, it's roughly a $5 million exercise for no tenants. There is not anybody right now that will use that building. We're building the space that we need behind that. So there's the carry cost on the building, right? For something just to sit there and be empty.
But there's also cost involved in creating this park, this lovely little park.
There is, but these requests, and we're happy to accommodate the park. We think it's the right thing to do. But to spend $5 million on a building that the market won't absorb at the moment is taking $5 million that should go towards research and development and manufacturing of the propulsion system for the airplane and the aircraft that we're trying to develop.
I get it.
Marla, let me ask you another question. What do the new LDRs say about this front of the building stuff, and particularly its waivability?
It is unchanged.
So somewhere in the LDR that says this is a non-waivable provision, says that explicitly?
Yes.
Huh.
Okay.
Let me say a quick thing. I do like the idea of, because essentially the whole airport consists of lots of lessees, right? And we do know that this is a separate phase. I do like the idea of carving it out somehow, you know, because if there was an existing building there, we wouldn't be having this discussion. You know, like it was just.
We're more than happy to leave the existing landscape building there for the foreseeable future and just landscape around that. We were trying not to do that because for a variety of reasons, but there's a building there that we're happy to leave, but the parking isn't fully behind that building and it would exceed the 50%. I believe it's no more than 50% of the parking can exceed the past that frontage. We would need a waiver from the DRB in order to accommodate that.
But I thought you don't need all the parking.
We don't. We're building the parking because we need the infrastructure, stormwater, power, all the other things that are coming through that area, and so just practically, it made sense to build that parking
Yeah.
now, which then the public would be able to use when they
Right.
came to the amenity.
Okay. Marla, help us out.
I mean, this is where you decide whether you have enough information and can make your decision in deliberations, I think. Can I want to ask one more thing. How comfortable, and you may need to turn and look at Larry again, are you if the board were to conclude that this idea of carving out the lot was the way to go? How comfortable are you that that would be okay with not just you guys, but the airport as a separate lease lot?
Well, I'll speak for the Beta side and then let Larry speak for the airport side. But the airport's been a fantastic partner in getting this project to this point. I would see no reason why we wouldn't be able to find a way between the two groups to make that happen. But again, I would defer to.
And I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily the way to go. I just want the board to know what the options are when they're deliberating.
Understood.
So Larry, you've been sworn in before as part of this hearing, so go ahead.
He's just coming up to a microphone. Any of them will work. You just need to push the button on it.
I haven't been part of the lease negotiations, but I can assure you that the airport would support working with Beta to make this, work out if that was the direction you took. So.
Thank you, Larry. So board, do you think we have all the information we need to deliberate and make a decision?
I just wanted to clarify, I think I heard this earlier, was to get the city's attorney's opinion about this lot discussion. That would be new information. And that wouldn't be an option if we close tonight.
No, it's okay. Council is exempt from that.
Oh, okay. Then I would say.
So we could close tonight and you could still get council's legal opinion about this? Yeah. Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Let's ask if there are any members of the public who would like to comment. Are there any online, Delilah?
I would like to mention something.
Okay. Go ahead, Noah.
I'm trying to turn my camera on here. Do you want my camera or it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. One of the things that I heard tonight was mention of the PUDs and the LDRs on Williston Road. And to my knowledge, a temporary park is nice, but the building for Beta should be on Williston Road. That's what the town has required, and that's what's in the PUDs and the LDRs. And I think it's the DRB's responsibility to enforce those. I keep hearing about the parking. And yeah, the parking is great. And it'd be nice to have this like little half-acre park, a half-acre. We heard 20 minutes about a half-an-acre park. And I find that like ridiculous, to be honest with you. And I've heard the DRB asking the lawyers to lawyering it out. Lawyer it out. Frank, I think that's what you said. And that to me is just, it's unbelievable. And
well, it was also sardonic.
I'm sorry, Frank, I'm talking. Thank you. You can talk after I'm done. And the Beta reps are not your counsel. They are people who are trying to build in our town, and you are our representatives. It is important that our representatives represent the city of South Burlington. I find it very frustrating because I come to these meetings. I'm the treasurer of Voices of the Environment, Super PAC in our town. And I find it very frustrating that consistently our representatives take advice from people who are trying to make gain in our community and not protect our community from people who may or may not have a other than financial motive. For example, some of the things I never heard about tonight were, well, when Beta is up and running, where is all the spent fuel going to go? Where's the fuel going to be stored? How will it be stored? Where will it be stored? How close to the airport will it be stored? Is the reason why we want to push things one direction or another just for environmental reasons? And I think that I really asked the DRB, please think of those kind of things before you make any decision tonight, because there's no rush. There's no reason to make a decision tonight. Our town is packed. We have the best situation. You are holding all the cards. Our property is worth so much. There's no reason to just give it away for nothing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hyman.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to make comments? None? Okay. Thank you. So.
Madam Chair, can I just offer one clarification, please?
Sure, go ahead.
It may not have come across in our comments earlier, but Beta is an electric aviation company. We have no fuel. The building we are building has no fossil fuels in it, either for the operation of the building or for the operation of the aircraft. It is a net zero building. We have a zero emission aircraft that we are assembling on this property.
Thank you for that clarification.
Can I respond?
Yes, go ahead, but please make it brief. We have a pretty full agenda tonight.
How is the electricity stored?
Mr. Hyman, this is not a back and forth question and answer session. We welcome your comments, but it's not really an opportunity to ask questions back and forth.
Thank you. I apologize then.
Thank you. All right. I think it's time to entertain a motion to close this hearing.
Motion to close the hearing.
Thank you, Quinn. Do I have a second? Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of closing the master plan application MP 2102 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? No. Okay, thank you. The hearing is closed. Yes.
I just wanted to let you know, I received a text message from Mark. He said that his meeting has gone sideways and he isn't sure if he's going to be able to join us.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 7. Continued preliminary and final plat application, SD 2128 of Beta Air LLC to consolidate 5 existing lots ranging from 1.53 to 736.2 acres into one lot of 747.92 acres, and to construct the first phase of a new concurrent application for a master plan to include 344,000 square feet of manufacturing and office building, improving approximately 2,400 square feet of private road or feet of private road, and constructing associated site improvements at 3070 Williston Road. I just have to call up my my version on my iPad. Bear with me for a minute. I have comments on. Oh, come on. Okay, there it is. All right. I assume Stephanie is recused for this one as well. Who is here for the applicant?
Hi, this is Art Klugo, Beta Technologies.
Okay, thank you, Art. And do you have anyone else with you?
Yeah, Blaine Newton, Beta Technology.
Okay.
And we have members of the design team here as well.
Are they going to testify if needed?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you all raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Okay. Why don't we ask you, Art, to give a very brief overview of the preliminary and final plat application, and then we can move into the staff comments.
Will do. Thank you. I thought you did, or staff did a fantastic job on the write-up describing the project. I suppose the subtle nuance here is that we did submit additional documents for a phase one, and we submitted those last time, and we provide clarifications this time. So I'm happy to answer any questions and just work through the staff comments here.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this is also written as a decision, but the comments are in red and numbered. So the first comment on page 3, we need specific information on the area of manufacturing space and office space in the building.
Yes, that was provided to staff supplemental earlier today. That
Perfect.
breakdown is just for the purposes of this conversation. 163,000 square feet encompasses roughly 12,000 square feet of office space, 132,000 square feet of final assembly space, and 20,000 square feet of storage space.
Thank you. Comment number, I think these are not numbered correctly. On page 6, that's okay. There's a number.
1, the second.
1
prime. Perfect. Love it.
And this is a long one. It's detailed. I struggle with it. So Marla, I'm going to ask you to paraphrase it, please.
Okay.
And maybe it's clearer now that we've had this whole recreational amenity discussion, but.
Not really. It's unrelated.
Oh, all right.
So originally, this proposal was for the entire 163,000 square foot building as one phase. The applicant, in their need to sort of remain nimble, has now decided that they would like to build this building in 2 phases. The first portion, which is roughly half the building, would be mostly the manufacturing portion of the building. And then the second half and that's sort of to the rear as you're thinking about from Williston Road. And then the second phase would be the front relative to Williston Road. And so this staff comment is asking whether the first phase, the rear, could, as a standalone phase, as the board directed us at the last hearing, meet the standards that pertain to desirable transition from structure to site, common materials, architectural characteristics, harmonious relationships to terrain, existing buildings and roads. What's interesting about this is, given that it's a master plan, staff kind of feels that there's the additional level of being consistent with the master plan.
Doesn't it have to be consistent with the master plan?
So the standards that we're looking at in this report don't use the word master plan, but I would argue that, the master plan presents a project, and if it's not consistent, then why do we have a master plan?
Can I provide some color on that, Marla? Yeah. So it's an interesting concept. Master plans are a land development organization tool. They're intended to create a roadmap for how the area would be developed, how the project would be developed. Our intent would not to have a sterile, all buildings are the same, very consistent with what we've already done. We would hope that that staff and the board would support a variety of architecture that would meet the intended use of each of the buildings, which are different. We have a final assembly plant, we have a cultural center, we have a childcare, and we have a commercial building proposed. Each very different uses, which should ideally translate into very different architecture. So in terms of establishing the quality of the project, we're doing that through the use of the land planning principles that have been applied. We're doing that through the use of the environmental principles that have been applied, and using the comprehensive plan as a guideline for how this fits into the context of the community, and believe that this project, the final assembly project, whether it's built in full or built in 2 phases, certainly meets all of those thresholds and established standards for what it is that we're trying to do.
Thank you. So at the end of your comments, Marla and board, staff, I quote, staff recommends the board include a finding that the first sub-phase is inconsistent with the character established at master plan, but that this preliminary and final plat meets when both phases are constructed. I believe there's a word missing. Marla?
Is there?
But that this preliminary and final plat meets.
Oh, I guess
when,
you could say meets this criteria.
Okay, when both phases are constructed.
So, I mean, there's these 3 sort of potential. So the first question in the first paragraph is this building consistent with the standards when only the first sub-phase is built?
Right.
And if it's not, there's 3 bullets that sort of suggest how to deal with it. And then there's a couple additional paragraphs.
So I guess the first question to the board is, do you believe that the first subphase meets the criteria that are listed above in the staff report?
Marla, the blank wall is a south-facing wall?
It's southwest facing?
Well, where is it? Where is it in relation to Williston Road?
Delilah, can you pull up?
It's roughly 45 degrees to Williston Road.
Yeah.
700 feet setback off the road.
Perfect. Thank you, Art.
I mean, calling a spade, he's really going to put up an ugly wall for an indeterminate period of time. That's casting it in its harshest light. But can anybody cast it any other way?
Yeah, I would say that it's far from ugly. We've spent a lot of time designing and elevating the building to meet Beta's standards, which are extremely high from an architectural perspective if you've been out to our facilities. This is quite a beautiful building, whether built in half or in full. And I think that when everybody comes out, they will actually see that for themselves. We forwarded several renderings to staff as supplemental information. It might be helpful to look at those renderings. I would also suggest, Frank, that we're treading into a very subjective area in terms of aesthetics. And so, if we were to compare this building in context to what we're trying to accomplish and some of the contemporary manufacturing facilities that have been done, this would hold up extremely well. And when compared to our neighbors, although advised by staff not to use that as the barometer because it's a very low barometer, but we are elevating significantly the architecture and the experience on an underutilized, undeveloped piece of property from Williston all the way back to the airport.
I'm just talking about the wall art, not the building.
It's a manufacturing facility, and one of the challenges that we have, Frank, and certainly I'm sure you would appreciate this, is that we're building carbon fiber aircraft. We're going to have highly sensitive automation equipment in this building. These buildings have very limited exposure to the outdoors for a variety of practical, fundamental, functional reasons. And staff's comments here that maybe we need to put windows in are contrary to what this facility needs to do.
Are they recessed? That's not a flat surface, is that right?
That's right. So what happens there is we're taking a metal panel and we're inserting a 4-inch vertical rib that stands off from that metal panel to create shade and shadow and experience as the light travels across that face to create some visual interest in the building. In its own way, think of it as a DNA strip or some...
It's actually, now let me interrupt you, it's actually not bad. That's not what I was visualizing.
Yeah. So is that what Frank calls the wall?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I think there's some other views. Maybe we just go through all the is that the first page that shows a rendering in there? That's the first page that I saw. Okay. Is that the first rendering you sent? I mean, they're probably not in the order he sent them. I just assembled it into one.
Yeah, there were 3 that were sent in whatever order. So they provide just a progression and different views, either a straight on view, what the view might be from the parking as you're coming up the ramp against some landscaped amenities, both as the ramp split, and then as you travel from the parking lot up the steps, what that experience would be like as you come up to the entrance, what we're calling the north entrance to the project.
Is there any view that shows sort of that corner that because like you said, it's 45 degrees to Williston Road. So what we're seeing is the part that's on the left of the 45 degrees. Is there any view other than what's in the packet that shows what's to the right of the 45 degrees? If not, it's on page 38 of the packet, but it's not like a pretty rendering. It's just a elevation.
Page 38.
Of the packet, yeah, the other one.
Right. I don't know if we have one, but what happens on that end, and it shows up in the landscape plan, right, is that end, once you get to where phase 2 will be, there's some planting that happens in there. So that corner starts to fade away and disappear behind the landscaping that'll be in place until it gets moved once phase 2 is constructed.
So just to be clear, the image that you just showed that Frank said he thought was attractive, that is half the building, roughly.
That's correct. That same sort of pattern continues to the right. And then at the very far right, when phase 2 is built, will be that entrance that Marla referred to in her comments.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So it's not like you're just building half a building and leaving just a wall, plain wall. It's artful.
It is, and that extends around the corner. We're taking that same level of detail as we turn that corner on what will be a temporary wall. We'll have that same sort of fin treatment. Those fins will be removed when we extend the plant for phase 2. So there you can see that elevation right there at the top of the page. That is the wall that separates phase 1 from phase 2. And that same sort of vertical articulation is being used to create shade and shadow patterns along that elevation.
Now I understand. Okay, now I know why there's all the lines in the diagram. I wondered earlier.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what do folks think? Do you think this meets the requirements, or should the applicant be required to address those 3 bullets?
So a quick question for you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Yes.
I know for myself, it was really helpful in reading both those provisions. They're very short. They're 1 sentence each, or actually I think, yeah, there's one. I'm not sure if the Development Review Board is actually referencing those standards, but they're quite important as you look at what staff's comments are and how we work towards closure on this item. I'm happy to read it. I have it in front of me, or happy to let staff or yourself read it.
No, go ahead, Art.
So great, thank you. Provision 14.06B3 provides, without restricting the permissible limits of the applicable zoning district, The height and scale of each building shall be compatible with its site and existing or anticipated adjoining buildings. So 14.06B talks about scale. It doesn't talk about surface treatment or any of the architectural elements. It's just, does the building sit within the site? As we've described before, we have a 2-story high building along Williston Road. We have a 3-story high building along the airport side. We're the lucky recipients of a site that just happens to slope down 20 feet, and it accommodates very nicely the building that we're proposing. The second provision, 14.06C1, provides the Development Review Board shall encourage the use of a combination of common materials and architectural characteristics such as rhythm, color, texture, form or detailing, landscaping, buffers, screens, and visual interpretations to create attractive transitions between buildings of different architectural styles. Those are the 2 standards that we're trying to apply to the renderings that we just looked at.
And
Thank you.
I think they meant them.
Yeah,
Okay.
John, this is Jim. So do I.
Okay. So other folks, or are we in agreement that they meet the criteria? Does anyone not agree with Jim and Frank? Okay. Do you all believe we have enough information to move on? I'll take the silence as a yes. So let's move over to number 2 on page 12. And this is a request to document the value of the excess landscaping costs. Have you already done that, or is this something you can provide us with?
We have not done that yet. We have not bid out the final bid for the final design of the landscaping with the technical drawings. Those are being developed right now and will be finished up here in a couple of March 11th. So what's that? Not quite a month from now. But what we would note is that we're happy to provide the subcontractor bid for that and allow the DRB and staff to calculate whatever that delta is, and that delta would be applied forward. So we're completely open book, happy and willing to share those numbers with you when we have them.
Thank you. Marla, does that work? I can't hear you.
You're getting the unfortunate effect of being concurrent with another application that has a similar request. I wonder if the board would be interested in allowing them to, I guess the provision would say something like they can count the excess landscaping as long as the other phases meet the provisions of the landscaping plan already. You know, like if, I'm phrasing it very poorly, but basically as long as the other criteria of the landscaping for each phase are met, then they can count the excess rather than they automatically can count the excess and therefore not put any landscaping around a different building.
Yeah, we're happy to, if you're talking about the form and the function of the landscaping, that seems very reasonable. If you're saying that the dollars,
No, it wouldn't be the dollars. It'd be
Okay.
like the things about, you know, are the transformers screened? Are there enough trees relative to the parking spaces? That kind of thing.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Can board members live with that? Okay, I'll take your silence as a yes. Moving on to number 3. This is about retention of the 32-inch and 34-inch maples rather than removing them. And the recommendation from staff is that we require the applicant to revise the grading or add small retaining walls to preserve both of those maple trees. And discuss whether advanced sidewalk construction methods should be enlisted to retain the 3 locust trees. The value of mature trees is far greater than the value of new landscaping, which of course we all know and appreciate. What do board members think about that? I'll kick it off. I think it makes perfect sense. Those are mature trees. And I think it makes sense to try to preserve them. I don't know about the locusts, the 3 locusts, but what do others think?
The idea of taking down a healthy, assuming it's healthy, a 32-inch maple is repugnant to me.
Right. Right. Does anyone
I agree.
disagree? Go ahead,
I
Dan.
agree- No, I agree with Frank and you. Yeah, I like it language and
Okay.
Yep.
Does anyone not agree? Okay. Does that give us and you, Marla, what we need?
Well, about the maples, you said you were
Pardon?
you said you were less sure about the locust, and I'm not sure what that means.
Okay.
And just, if I may, just to close the maples, we have redesigned the grading to preserve both of those. We still do remain concerned about the 32-inch, but we have redesigned it to accommodate staff's comments.
Okay, thank you, Art. What about the 14 to 22-inch locust trees along Williston Road?
I'm happy to share some thoughts on that, or are you asking?
Okay,
me?
go ahead, Art.
Yep. So that's a completely different challenge. We've placed the sidewalk per the city sidewalk standards, the dimensional standards that set the placement of that sidewalk. Once you set that sidewalk, it starts to impact those trees. And so from our perspective, we really have 2 options. One is to not put that sidewalk in on the right-hand side of our entry drive, which right now it doesn't extend anywhere, but at such time that the network was extended and that sidewalk would need to go in, that we would do that to preserve those trees as long as possible. The only other real alternative, unfortunately, is if the sidewalk has to go in and it has to be in that location, then the roots are going to be damaged, those trees are going to die, and it would seem that the benefit to planting trees now and letting them grow in their new location would outweigh leaving those trees, letting them die, and then having to have smaller trees 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. And I'm not even sure what the length would be that those trees would survive. So those are the 2 options that we have. From the owner's side, or the applicant side, we'd prefer to put the sidewalk in per the dimensional standards, start extending that network now, and put the new locust trees in where they were proposed on the landscaping plan.
Dawn,
Thank
may
you.
I?
Please.
So what we meant by advanced sidewalk construction methods is we're aware of sort of a geogrid that can be used in place of the subbase for a sidewalk for the section where it's adjacent to a tree. So it's sort of, instead of destroying the roots, it'd be 5 inches of concrete and then the geogrid and then keep the soil underneath.
Are those the cells that we've heard about?
No, because those would be
Oh.
for a new installation.
Okay.
And I see that Jeff Hodgson, who's a professional landscape architect, is in the room, and he's sort of making a face.
So one of the consultants said they've never used them.
Yeah.
You need to hit the button first.
I'm not familiar with the GeoGrid solution. Chris, I don't know if you've done that before. I mean, the tricky thing with these trees is most of their roots are in the top 12 inches of the soil. So normally you would put in about a foot of crushed stone to prevent frost heave. I don't know what the GeoGrid would do, but
Yeah, this is a solution that I was reading about that they use in Palo Alto, California, when they had driveways that went through sort of areas of mature trees.
yeah, they don't have frost though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just not familiar with that.
And then, I'm not going to push this too hard, and I appreciate Jeff, being willing to have this conversation. The other thing that we've gotten from the Director of Public Works in the past is that sidewalk grades are a little bit more flexible than roadway grades. So, if the idea was that the sidewalk grade had to come up 12 inches in order to not dig down, that would be acceptable to the city.
Provided that the condition was written in such a way that it wouldn't slow down the project. We're happy to explore other alternatives for those trees to find a way that works for the city. It's the guidance that we've had and what we've looked at. It would seem the practical way would be to put the sidewalk in and then move trees, but
Yeah, I appreciate the point that you're making that, since this isn't going to be a sidewalk that's used very much for a while, are you creating a better solution by putting in trees now that will be mature by the time it is used? What was I going to say? Lost it. Oh, Jeff, what's the lifespan of a honey locust?
They can be pretty long-lived. Maybe not as much as oaks or maples, but 60 years or so, 70.
Ford?
I don't feel as strongly about the locusts as I do about the maples. And I appreciate their comments that maybe getting new trees started earlier will avoid having to see the locust die a natural death and waiting for new trees to grow. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dawn.
Okay. Other board members? Is anyone opposed to that strategy?
I support the same as you, Don.
Okay, thanks. All right, okay, let's move on if no one has anything else to number 4, which is stormwater grading as a condition. Can you live with that, Art?
Absolutely. It was just a lack of coordination on our part. Those the drawings have been coordinated and the comments have been incorporated into the revised documents.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, moving to page 16, number 6. This takes us back to the traffic impact study. Staff has recommended. So where are we with this, Marla?
This is where the technical review sort of led us to understand that VTrans and VHB is not recommending the signal as part of this phase.
Okay. So we've kind of resolved this.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, moving on to number 7. And this relates to comments from the water department.
Yeah, there was just some miscommunication there. The South Burlington Water Department comments have all been addressed. They're satisfied.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's good news. And let's see. Moving on to page 20, number 8. We need data regarding short-term bike storage. Have you provided that already?
We have.
Yeah, so part of it was that we needed to know the breakdown of the building in order to calculate what they needed.
Right. Sure, and we have that.
Just now, so that means I haven't done the math. Can you present what you're proposing for short-term bike storage, Art?
Yes, if you have the supplemental information, it would be on page 5 of 6 at the top of the page.
No promises that the pages are in the order you gave to us.
It's in the write-up, yeah.
Dan, I'm stepping out for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Page 5 of the supplemental, yeah. At the very top, there's a little table. Okay, so we'll take on faith once she gets it up that you've done the math right.
Fingers crossed.
We haven't been burned yet. So this is the math. In the first of the 2 phases, they're saying they're required to build 10, or required to build 12. They have 10. They're required 6 long-term and they're proposing 16. The LDRs allow you to count long-term towards your short-term requirement up to 50%. And those long-term are inside the building, and those I have seen. So where on your plan are the short-term? Because the reason I made this comment is because the phase 2 short-term spaces are in a place where it's not adjacent to the phase 1, I guess?
That's right. What we have 2 entrances. We have a north entrance and a south entrance, if you will, along that south elevation. Along the north entrance, which is the phase that we're talking about right
Back
now.
in.
Hi, Don. Thanks.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
I'll hand you the gavel.
Thank you. Ah, the power.
Yeah. So the short term, the outdoor spaces, if you will, for the north entrance are just outside that north entrance.
Okay. I think, board, this is one of those situations where we say, you're confident that you've got it right. You probably did. We'll look at it as part of our review.
Right. And you included some diagrams in the minutes, not the minutes, but the write-up that we provided at the last hearing. There were a series of diagrams for the bicycle parking, and both the long-term and short-term are called out for each of the entrances in those diagrams, along with a table that was similar but not broken down quite the same way as the table we just looked at.
Okay, we can work with that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Marla, what I see now are red comments in the decision, and I'm assuming that those are kind of contingent upon what we discussed tonight,
Most of them
correct?
are. There was one, I had a little difficulty figuring out how to format this. There was one in the condition about timing of the zoning permit for the second phase that I was hoping that you could look at tonight.
Could you show it to us, please?
I would be happy to as soon as I get to it. Yeah, it's 8. Perfect. Thanks, Delilah.
Good. Oh, yes. The zoning permit for the first subphase must be obtained within 6 months of approval. The zoning permit for the second subphase must be obtained within 12 months of approval. The applicant may request a single one-year extension. What does the board think about this?
Could I offer some context on that?
Sure.
So what we had talked about, I don't recall, my apologies, whether it was the hearing number 2 or hearing number 1, but we had a discussion about how the rollout of the phases might work. So it was probably done under the master plan. But functionally, what's called out for here is if we were to be approved to move forward tomorrow, then construction and operationalization of the facility would not happen until April of 23, which then we require sooner than that. Before we even knew, like this, we had the discussion about automation and how we were hand building our first versions of the aircraft, and that we would be learning over the next year or so about what sort of automation would be required when we build phase 2. The decision as it's drafted is asking us to make that decision to roll out on this building before we've completed construction and operationalized the first phase of the building. What we had talked about before was a 3.5-year window that we had to pull the next zoning permit for phase 2. Originally, I asked for something longer than that, but in discussions with staff and the board through the hearings, that got brought back to the 3.5 years. The applicant, we're requesting that 3.5 years be reestablished so that we can construct, operationalize, and plan the next phase of the assembly. The office piece with the park, that's pretty well done. The Great Lawn, it's the assembly piece that we need the time to be able to do that.
Thank you, Art. So Marla, what was the rationale for number 8 as you've written it?
I needed to pick a number and I didn't have any numbers to go on.
Okay.
And just for clarification, we would ask for that 3.5 years to be from substantial completion, not from when the zoning permit for phase 1 is actually
I don't
Hold.
think we can do it that way.
Then can we change the 3.5 years to 4.5 years? Or 5 years?
Understood.
Can we live with that?
So keep in mind, the master plan is a 10-year.
Right.
We don't have to decide that now either. Right?
So Art, say it again, just so I get it all down clearly. You're planning on occupying the first phase in April of 23.
Correct.
Okay. And you would like another year and a half after that to figure out what you want the interior of the second phase to be.
That's right. And then we probably have a year of design on that. And I mean,
No, I think, I do believe this was discussed at length at, I think, the first hearing during the master plan discussion, and I think it went from 5 to 3.5 based on staff and board discussion, but I don't recall exactly. But I think what Art was trying to articulate is we're going to start pretty slow. It's kind of crawl, walk, run. We're going to get into this space, build these aircraft really by hand, iron out the processes. As we're doing that, we'll determine the exact specifications that need to go inside that box, the second half of the box, to begin to scale to the numbers that we believe we need to meet to deliver against our promises to customers. And in doing that, it'll take us some time to understand what those requirements are in the planning of that next phase, inside the box, so to speak. And so what we're asking for is time for us to make that understanding. Otherwise, we'll have to roll out with really incomplete understanding of what's necessary, which frankly is not in the best long-term interest of us or job creation in South Burlington. And so I think what we're looking for here is, and what I thought we'd come to at least a conceptual agreement on previously was 3.5 months, 3.5 years post substantial completion, which was a compromise against the 5 years from today, I believe.
I apologize. I think the reason I lost all of that is because we ended up scrapping all that and saying 10 years for the master plan, and then I forgot everything that happened before that.
Okay. And certainly 10 years would work with
Right.
without any challenge. So if you want to be consistent and align those two, then that makes a lot of sense and probably uncomplicates a lot of this.
So can we live with that, board? And Marla, can you live with that?
Gosh, that would be pretty unprecedented. I mean,
Well, and
go ahead.
oh, sorry, I'm just trying to also recall the context of, I think, and I don't know how this speaks to kind of it not being a normal approach previously, but since they've done additional work on building out the first subphase to make sure that it would comply across the board with the LDRs as a standalone, that we were comfortable with just that 10-year larger bucket without parsing it out further. I think that was also part of maybe the reasoning there, if that's the direction we're thinking.
Thank you. Quinn, Marla, did you say that would be unconventional, or what was it you said?
Yeah, I think that would be pretty unprecedented. I mean, I haven't seen an approval that gives 10 years for the second sub-phase. Even in the case of, South Village, it was really, I think it was 8 was the maximum that was given. But we've done unprecedented things. That's how new things happen.
What do board members, what do you think of the applicant's proposal?
I guess, sorry, I'm just going to jump in one more time. The parts of the plan that are proposed for this final plat that would not be constructed in the first phase are a small section of parking and the recreation path on the east side and the sort of great lawn area with the amphitheater seating and viewing area and that sort of thing.
That's correct. And one of the thoughts I was going to offer on just some of the wording is we tried to stay away from amphitheater because that has other larger context to it. What we really have is a multi-purpose gathering space. And it's smaller. It's not a music venue, which is what a lot of people think about when they hear amphitheater right away. And that we
Fish
don't want-
concert.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, you're seating with a lot of topography.
Right.
Area.
Yes.
So board members, are we okay with this? Dan's okay. Is anyone not okay?
Well, just,
Okay.
sorry, just for clarification,
ahead.
for when we make a final decision about this, it sounds like the applicant would be okay from the 5 years from whatever date we were talking about, from approval.
Right.
That is an option.
That would be an option.
Okay, just wanted
That
to.
would, did you say would?
Yes.
Okay, good. So are folks okay with that? Before we turn to public comment, are there any other questions from the board? Do we need any more information? Marla, do you have anything to ask? Okay,
I have 2 questions if I could.
sure.
Before public comment. So on item number 9 in the draft decision, I just wanted to check in and make sure that we're good there relative to the water wastewater demand. We had previously submitted an allocation request of nearly 5,000 GPD against the total allocation, and just wanted confirmation that staff had received that. And
You're talking about condition number 9.
condition number 9, correct? Yeah.
So you want to modify, okay, this is the part where like we write a draft decision and then they have the opportunity to say, oh, that's not what we wanted.
Great.
So yeah, if you want to go into that.
Great, yeah. And that was provided the calculations there for you in the supplemental information that was sent earlier today.
Is that something you can, so you're saying that phase 1 would have less than 25,900 gallons per day?
Considerably less, yes.
What
Like,
would that number be?
it's 4880.
And the water and wastewater are the same? So weird.
Input and output.
Board, I don't have a problem with that. If you guys have opinions about it, we can certainly talk about it, but.
I'm fine with it. Anyone have any problems with it? Okay. Any other go ahead.
Yeah, just one more. On condition 14, I was unsure of the intent. It said prior to issuance of a zoning permit for the phase, including the artwork, the applicant shall meet with the Public Art Commission before, prior to issuance of a zoning permit. So I believe that was intended to read prior to the issuance of a zoning permit for phase 2, not for phase.
Well, we didn't know which phase the artwork was going
Yeah,
in.
it would be for phase 2.
Oh, wait a minute. All right. Isn't assuming you get to do your quote temporary recreational space, isn't that part of phase 1?
It is, and that would be I guess what I'm saying here, Frank, is we're more than happy to do that. It'll be in both, honestly. We'll have something in phase 1. We'll have something in phase 2. What I didn't want to have happen, which is the way this was constructed, is that we've already allocated some amount of money, as previously discussed in our other hearings. Didn't want to hold up the issuance of a zoning permit because we weren't able to get a meeting on the calendars with the Public Art Commission, which is the way that this is written right now.
But we can or cannot count on public art being in this temporary recreation space if it happens to be permitted.
You can count on it when
And
it's
we can,
permitted.
therefore we can write that in.
So one thing we've done on city center projects that have this art component is we've said that can be done prior to issuance of a CO instead of prior to issuance of a ZP.
Excellent.
How would the board feel about that?
It's okay with me, so long as it applies to phase one.
Yep, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Okay, anything else before we turn to public comment?
No other clarifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment? Delilah, are there any that you see?
I don't see any.
Thank you. So no members of the public comment. Okay. So I think this would be an appropriate time to entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Make a motion to close the hearing for the application in hand.
Thank you, Dan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to take a lot of lawyering to get to the conclusion to make sure we can represent the public property. A lot of lawyering.
I missed that, Frank. Say that again, please.
No, it's okay.
Was that a joke?
It was.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. It went right. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving?
Nope. Closing. Closing, not approving.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor of closing preliminary and final plat application SD 2128 of Beta Air, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nope. Okay. So thank you, Beta crew, for helping us understand your project and for hanging in there with us. Thank you.
You're more than welcome, and we definitely appreciate the effort. I do have one last tug/request here, and I know you're really, it's tough. There's a lot of work on your plate. This is a very challenging application, and appreciate you working through this with us. Completely understand that you have a statutory right to, I believe, 45 days, Marla, to issue a decision.
They do.
We would respectfully request that we receive and the board render that decision sooner for many and more of the same reasons that the previous applicant stated, in that it is just, in terms of what we're doing and the quantity of steel and the type of electrical equipment, you can just imagine what the supply chain issues are like. And 6 weeks is a really long time and potentially very impactful to what we're trying to do here. So in whatever latitude the board and staff can find to move this along quickly, we'd be very, very appreciative.
We've heard that. Thank you. Okay. So turning back to the agenda, we have minutes of January 18th and February 2nd.
And I apologize, board, I didn't actually review them, but I did have Betsy review the attendee list. But I didn't review for things like misspellings or misattributions or anything like that.
Shall we postpone those until the next meeting?
I am not going to have time to review them. It's up to you guys to review them.
Okay, all right. Do people?
I'd like to postpone until next meeting because I haven't either.
Okay, all right. All right, let's do that then.
Okay.
So I guess that's it for our meeting tonight. I will not be at the next meeting. I'm going to be away, and I thought I could participate remotely, but that's not going to be possible because I'll be traveling within my travel. So on that date. So Dan, I'm hoping you'll be able to be there. And
what day is it again?
It's Wednesday, March 2nd. It's the day after town meeting day.
I'll be here.
Great.
We have a
You'll
very
all be-
full agenda that night. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hearings of medium-sized projects.
Okay.
Gee, I'm really sad I'm not going to be there.
Well, I'm
Well,
really
so-
sad that we're not doing the minutes because it's going to be a freaking long night.
There's always the 10 o'clock deadline, but, all right. We don't have to vote to close to end the
Nope.
meeting tonight, do we?
No.
So, everyone, get a look at the moon. It's beautiful. And thank you for good work tonight.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.